Alright, time for another video. If you're going to do another video, you may as well get a magic lesson out of it. Does everything have to turn into a magic lesson with you? Well, in this case, I'm not the one teaching you. Then who is? I think I already answered that. The episode's going to teach you. Come again? Today we're going to delve back a little bit. You're going to let the great and powerful Trixie teach you how magic works. I hate homework. Well, you're going to end up with it anyways. Today, you're going to be studying the Alicorn Amulet. What about the amulet? We already know that it made her crazy and powerful. Yes, but the amulet itself is a school of magic. Come again? Alright, follow me here for a couple of minutes. The idea of imparting magical abilities onto another object or person is the school of enchantment. It's not the whole school of enchantment, but it's a good chunk of it. Well, what do you mean by that? Here, let's look at the amulet itself. We already know that using the amulet increases the unicorn's power, correct? Yeah, I get that part, but what do you mean that it's part of the school of enchantment? Well, there are two ways that we can look at this. First, someone had to actually enchant the amulet to have this effect. Someone had to find the right materials, the right spell effects, and then impart them into the amulet so that they would have another effect when paired with the caster. The second way that we look at this is that the amulet itself casts a certain type of spell to amplify a unicorn's power. Basically, in place of having another person cast the spell for a temporary amount of time, the amulet is something that allows it to be used under a specific condition. So the amulet's created, and then the amulet casts the spell itself? Well, yes and no. The amulet itself is just the host for the spell. Usually people refer to these as artifacts, or magic items. They're not intelligent, they don't actually cast the spell, they just host it. And think of it more like a battery holding a charge. When made from the right material, something can be enchanted in a way that will let it retain this spell for a long period of time. The effects don't kick in, however, until someone actually wears or wields the item. Trixie herself uses the amulet to cast spells. It also imparts a knowledge of specific spells that are normally out of her range. So, like the Age spell that she created, or the giant dome that she surrounded the city with. That's correct. Well, if something was created with a specific intent, why did it have such a bad effect on Trixie? Well, what do you mean? Yes, Trixie was able to use the amulet to win the first magic duel. But it also seems like Trixie seemed to be slowly losing her mind, becoming more paranoid. Well, this is usually the side effect of someone other than the original caster wielding the object. I mean, think about it. The object was created in order to amplify someone's power. The original creator of the amulet was probably able to compensate for the effects. However, anyone afterwards wouldn't have the same knowledge of how the artifact works. As well, anyone who's weaker in the use of magic may end up with a surplus of energies that they don't know how to contain. Yeah, I think I kind of remember seeing that, but it had nothing to do with an artifact. Can you explain? Well, let's take a look at Tyrek. He's a creature that steals magic and then gives himself a surplus at the expense of draining someone else. As a result, he went from having a spindly frame to, well, completely jacked. However, it also affected his mindset. He went from being sneaky and conniving to brutish. This doesn't mean that he was totally dumb, but it affected the way that he thought and the way that he behaved. I suppose you can use that as a more direct example. One could theorize that Trixie was overpowered by her own magic. Her mind only returned to being somewhat rational after she ended up having the amulet removed. There's still one thing that I didn't quite get, though. And that is? How come somebody else couldn't take the amulet off of her? Well, that's a bit iffy to answer. The fact is, I'm not sure. Sometimes objects are cursed so that they end up being harder to remove. However, others might be safeguarded with magic to shield them from being removed by others. I don't think that the amulet was cursed, but I do think that it was harder for her to pass up the power that it gave. At any rate, what have we learned? I guess we've learned that magical artifacts can be enchanted to do certain effects. Yes. And that Trixie doesn't need any help to be best unicorn. No. Bad. Bad Deckard.